Berkshire Hathaway Incorporated. The shareholders of Berkshire Hathaway Incorporated are gaining net worth during 2002 was $6.1 billion, which increased the per share book value of both our Class A and Class B stock by 10.0% over the last 38 years. And since present management took over, per share book value has grown from $19 to $41,727, a rate of 22.2% compounded annually. All figures used in this report apply to only Berkshire's A shares, the successors to the only stock of the company held outstanding before 1996. The B shares have an economic interest equal to 1/30th of the A, and August 6, 2002 was a banner year. I'll provide yields later, but here's a summary. Our various insurance operations performed exceptionally well despite a sluggish economy. A decade ago, Berkshire's annual pre-tax earnings from our renowned insurance business was $272 million. Now, from our ever-expanding collection of manufacturing, retail, and service and finance business, we earn the sum monthly. Our insurance group increased its flow to $41.2 billion, a hefty gain of $5.7 billion. Better yet, the use of these funds in 2002 cost us only 1%. Getting back to the low-cost flow, it feels good, particularly after our poor results during the three previous years. Berkshire's insurance division and Geico shot the lights out in 2002, and underwriting discipline was restored at General Ray. Berkshire acquired some important new business with economic characteristics ranging from good to great, run by managers ranging from great to great. Those are attributed to two legs of our entrance strategy. The third being a sensible purchase price. Unlike LBO operators, private equity firms, we have no exit strategy. We buy to keep. That's one reason why Berkshire is usually first and sometimes the only choice for sellers and their managers. Our marketable securities outperform most indices. For Lou Simpson, who manages equities at Geico, this was old stuff, but me, it was a welcome change from the last few years, during which was my investment record was dismal. The confluence of these favorable factors in the 2002 caused our book value gain to outstrip performance of S&P 500 by 32.1 percentage points as results in aberration of Charlie Munger, Berkshire Vice Chairman, my partner, and I hope to achieve at most an average annual advantage of a few points in the future. There will be years in which the S&P soundly trounced us. That will be, in fact, almost certainly happen during a strong bull market because a portion of our assets committed to common stocks has significantly declined. This change, of course, helps our relative performance in down markets, such as what we had in 2002. I have another caveat to mention about last year's results. If you've been a reader of financial reports from recent years, you've seen a flood of performer earnings statements, tabulations in which managers invariably show earnings far in excess of those allowed by their auditors. In these presentations, the CEO tells his owners, don't count on this, don't count on that, just count on what makes his earnings fat. Often forget all this bad stuff message delivered year after year without management so much blushing. We've yet to see a pro forma presentation disclosed that audited earnings were somewhat high, so let's make a little history. Last year, on a pro forma basis, the Berkshire had lower earnings than those we actually reported. That is true because two favorable factors aided our report figures, which means that Berkshire and other insurers as well, Mortgage Insurance, is loss and also had been normal in years where the reverse is true because of blockbuster, hurricane, earthquake, or man-made disaster. Many insurers like to report that they would have earned except for the unusual event. The implication is that since such mega cats are infrequently shouldn't be counted when true earnings are calculated. That is deceptive nonsense. Except for loss will forever be part of the insurance business, and they will forever be paid with shareholders' money. Nonetheless, for the purpose of this exercise, we'll take page of industry book for the last year when we didn't have any truly major disasters. Down adjustment is appropriate if you wish to normalize our underwriting result. Secondly, the bond market in 2002 favored certain strategies we employed in our finances and financial products business. Gains from those strategies will certainly diminish within a year or two and will disappear. Except for a couple of favorable breaks, our pre-tax earnings last year would have been about $500 million less than we actually reported. We're happy nevertheless to bank the excess. Jack Benny once said upon receiving an award, I don't deserve this honor, but then I have arthritis and I don't deserve that either. We continue to be blessed with an extraordinary group of managers, many of whom haven't displaced financially to work. They stick around. So, in 38 years, we've never had a single CEO of subsidiary elect to leave Berkshire to work elsewhere. Counting Charlie, we now have 6 managers over 75, and I hope that in 4 years that number increases by at least 2. Bob Shaw and are both 72. Our rational line, it's hard to teach a new dog old tricks. Berkshire's operating CEOs are master of their crafts and run their business as if they were their own. My job is to stay off their way and allocate whatever excess capital their business generates. It's easy to work. My managerial model is Eddie Bennett, who was a bat boy in 1919 at age 19. Eddie began his work at the Chicago White Sox, who was that year went to the World Series. The next year, Eddie switched to Brooklyn Dodgers, and they too won the league title. Our hero, however, smelled trouble changing boroughs. He had joined the Yankees in 1921, and they promptly won their first pennant in history. Now Eddie settled and shrewdly seeing what was coming. In the next 7 years, the Yankees won 5 American League titles. What does that have to do with management? It's simple. To be a winner, work within winners. In 1927, for example, Eddie received $700 for the 1/8 Bolshevik their share voted him by the legendary Yankee team of Ruth and Gehrig. This sum which Eddie earned by working only 4 days because New York swept the series was roughly equal to the full year pay then earned by Bat Boys who worked with ordinary associates. Eddie understood that how he liked bats wasn't important. What counted instead was hooking up with the cream of those on the playing field. I've learned from Eddie at Berkshire Hathaway had hand many bats to many of the heaviest hitters in American business. Acquisitions. We added some sluggers to our lineup last year. 2 acquisitions pending at year-end 2001 were completed. Albeca, which operates under the name Larson Joel, the U.S. leader in the custom-made picture frames, and Fruit of the Loom, the producer of about 33.2% of men's, boys, and underwear sold in the U.S. and other apparel as well. Both companies came about with Insanity CEO Steve McKenzie at Albeca and John Holland at Fruit. John, who had retired from the Fruit in 1996, rejoined it 3 years ago and rescued the company from the disastrous path it had gone down after he left. He's now 70 and I'm trying to convince him to make his next retirement coincident with mine, presently scheduled for 5 years after my death, a date subject, however, to extension. We initiated and completed 2 other acquisitions last year that were somewhat below our normal size threshold in aggregate. However, these businesses earn more than $60 million pre-tax annually. Both operate in an industry characterized by tough economics, but both have all important competitive strengths that enable them to earn decent returns on capital. The newcomers are CTB, a worldwide leader in equipment for the poultry, hog, egg production, and grain industries, and Guerin, a manufacturer of children's apparel whose largest and best-known line is Gear Animals. These 2 companies came with managers responsible for the impressive directors Vic Mancinelli at CTB and Seymour Lichenson at Guerin. The largest acquisition we initiated in 2002 was a Pamper Chef, a company with a fascinating history dating back to 1980. Doris Christopher was then a 34-year-old suburban Chicago home economics teacher with a husband, 2 little girls, and absolutely no business background. Wanting, however, to supplement her family's modest income, she turned into thinking about what she knew best. Food preparation. Why not, she wondered, make a business out of marketing kitchenware, focusing on the items she had found most useful. To get started, Doris borrowed $3,000 against her life insurance policy, all the money ever injected into the company, and went to the merchandise mart and buying expedition. There, she picked up a dozen each of this and that, and then went home to set up operations in her basement. Her plan was to conduct in-home presentations to small groups of women gathered at the homes of her friends. While driving to her first presentation, though, Doris almost herself, into returning home, convinced she was doomed to fail. But the woman she faced that evening loved her products, and her products purchased $175 of goods, and TPC was underway. Working with her husband, J. Doris did $50,000 of business in the first year. Today, only 22 years later, TPC does more than $700 million of business annually, working through 67,000 kitchen consultants. I've been to a TPC party, and it's easy to see why the business is a success. The company's products, in large part proprietary, are well-cited and highly useful, and the consultants are knowledgeable and enthusiastic. Everyone has a good time. Hurry to pamperchef.com and internet to find where to attend a party near you. 2 years ago, Doris brought in Sheila O'Connell Cooper, now CEO, to share the management load. And in August, they met with me in Omaha. It took me about 10 seconds to decide that these were 2 managers with whom I wished to partner. And promptly made a deal. Berkshire shareholders couldn't be luckier than me associated with Doris and Sheila. Berkshire also made some important acquisitions last year through Mid-American Energy Holdings, MEHC, a company in which our equity interest in 80.2%, because of the public utility holding company, the ACT, PUHCA, limits up to 9.9% voting control. However, we are unable to fully consolidate MEHC's financial statements, despite the voting control limitation in the somewhat strange capital structure of MEHC. It has engaged the company as a key part of Berkshire, as already it has $18 billion of assurance. As it delivers our largest stream of non-insurance earnings, it would be well to grow huge. Last year, MEHC acquired importing gas pipelines, the first Kern River extend from south to Wyoming and Southern California. This line moves about 900 million cubic feet of gas a day and is undergoing a $1.2 billion expansion that double with throughput by this fall. At that point, the line will carry enough gas to generate electricity for 10 million homes. The second acquisition, Northern Natural Gas, it's a 16,600-mile line extended from southwest to a wide range of Midwestern location. This purchase completed a corporate odyssey of particular interest in Omahans. From its beginning in the 1930s, Northern Natural was one of Omaha's premier businesses, run by CEOs who regularly distinguished themselves as community leaders. Then, in July 1985, the company, which in 1980 had been renamed Internorth, merged with Houston Natural Gas, a business less than half its size. The company announced that the enlarged operation would be headquartered in Omaha, with Internorth CEO continuing in that job. Within a year, those promises were broken, but the former CEO of Houston Natural had taken over the job at Internorth. The company had been remained in the headquarters, moved to Houston. These switches were orchestrated by new CEO Ken Lay, and the name he chose was Enron. Fast forward 15 years to late 2001, Enron troubles we've heard so much about, the borrowed money from Dinergy, putting up the Northern Natural pipeline operators as collateral. The two companies quickly had a falling out, and pipeline's ownership moved to Dinergy. That company in turn soon encountered severe financial problems of its own. MEHC received a call on Friday, July 26, from The Energy was looking for a quick and certain age sale of the pipeline. The Energy phoned the right party on July 29. We signed a contract, and shortly thereafter, Northern National returned home. When 2001 began, Charlie and I had no idea that Berkshire would be moving into the pipeline business, but upon completion of the Kern River expansion, MEHC will transport about 8% of all gas used in the U.S. We continue to look for large energy-related assets, though, in the electric utility field, PUHCA constraints what we can do. A few years ago, and somewhat by accident, MEHC found itself in the residential real estate brokerage business. It is no accident, however, that we have dramatically expanded the operation. Moreover, we are likely to keep on expanding in the future. We call this business Home Services of America, and the various communities it serves, though it operates under the names of the business that has acquired, such as CBS in Omaha, Edina Realty in Minneapolis, and Iowa Realty in Des Moines. In most metropolitan areas in which we operate, we are the clear market leader. Home Service is now the second largest residential brokerage business in the country. On one side or the other, both we participated in $37 billion of transaction last year, up to 100% from 2001. Most of our growth came from the three acquisitions we made during 2002. The largest, which was Prudential California Realty. Last year, this company, the leader in realtor in a territory consisting of Los Angeles, Orange, and San Diego counties, participated in $16 billion of closings. In a very short period, Ron Peltier, the company's CEO, has increased home service revenues and profits dramatically, though this business will always be cyclical. It's one we like, in which we continue to have an appetite for sensible acquisitions. Dave Sakal, AMG CEO, and Greg Ebel, his key associates, are huge assets for Berkshire. They are deal makers and they are managers. Berkshire stands ready to inject massive amounts of money into MEHC, and it will be fun to watch how far Dave and Greg can take the business. The economics of property casualty insurance. Our core business, though we have understand great importance in insurance to understand Berkshire, therefore, it is necessary that you understand how to develop an insurance company. The key determinants are 1, the amount of float the business generates, 2, its cost, and 3, most critical of all, the long-term outlook for both these factors. To begin with, float is money we hold but don't own. An insurance operation float arises because premiums are received before losses are paid in interval that sometimes extend over many years. During that time, the insurer invests the money. This pleasant activity typically carries, with a downside, the premiums that an insurer takes in usually do not cover the losses and expenses it eventually must pay. That leaves it running an underwriting loss, which is the cost of float. An insurance business have value if its cost of float over time is less than the cost of company would otherwise incur to obtain funds. But the business dilemma if its cost of float is higher than market rates for money. Moreover, the downward trend of interest rates in recent years has transformed underwriting losses that formerly were tolerable into burdens that move insurance business deeply into lemon category. Historically, Berkshire has obtained its float at very low cost. Indeed, our cost has been less than zero in many years. That is why we've actually been paid for holding other people's money. In 2001, however, our cost was terrible, coming in at 12.8%, about half of which attributable to World Trade Center losses back in 1983 to 84. We had years that were even worse. There's something automatic about cheap float. The table that follows shows an interval the float generated by the various segments of Berkshire's insurance operations. We entered the business 36 years ago upon acquiring National Indemnity Company, whose traditional lines are included in the segment Other Primary. For the table, we have calculated our float, which we generate in large amounts relative to our premium volume by adding net loss, reserve loss, adjustment reserves, fund held under insurance, assumed and unearned premium reserves, and subtracting insurance-related receivables, prepaid acquisitions, cost prepaid taxes, and deferred charges applicable to assumed reinsurance. Got that? Year in float and millions. Year 1967, 1977. General, Re, Other Insurance, Re, in, Other Primary, Total, 40, 20, 131, 20, 171. 1987, 1997, 1998, 1999, 2000, 2001, 2002. 2,917, 3,125, 3,444, 3,943, 4,251, 4,678, 14,909, 15,166, 15,525, 19,110, 22,107, 701, 4,014, 4,305, 6,285, 7,805, 11,262, 13,396, 807, 455, 415, 403, 598, 685, 943, 1,508, 7,386, 22,754, 25,298, 27,871, 35,408, 41,224. Last year, out-of-cost float was 1%. As I mentioned earlier, you should temper your enthusiasm about this favorable result, given that no mega catastrophe occurred in 2002. We're certain to get one of these disasters periodically, and when we do, our float costs will spike. Our 2002 results were hurt by 1, painful charge at general rate for losses that should have been recorded as costs in earlier years, and 2, a terrible charge we incur annually for retroactive insurance. See the next section for more about these items. These costs total about $1.75 billion, or about 4.6% of float. Fortunately, the overall underwriting experience in 2002 business was excellent, which allows even after the charges noted to approach at no cost rule. Absent a mega catastrophe, I expect our cost of float in 2003 to again be very low, perhaps even less than zero. In the rundown of insurance operations that follow, you will see why I'm optimistic that over time our underwriting results will both surpass those achieved by the industry and deliver investable funds at minimal cost. Insurance operations. If our insurance operations are to generate low-cost float over time, they must underwrite with unwavering discipline, B, reserve conservatively, and C, avoid an aggregation of exposures that will allow a supposedly impossible incident to threaten their solvency. All of our major insurance business, with one exception, have regularly met those tests. The exception is General Ray, and there was much to do with the company last year to get it up to the snuff. I'm delighted to report that under Joe Brando's leadership and with yeoman assistance by Ted Montross, enormous progress has been made on each of the fronts described. When I agreed in 1998 to merge Berkshire with Genray, I thought that companies stuck to these rules have enumerated. I'd studied operations for decades and had observed underwriting disciplines that was consistent and reserving that was conservative at major time. I detected this in Genray standards. I was that wrong. Generous culture and practices has substantially changed in unbeknownst to management, and to me, the company was grossly mispricing its current business. In addition, Genray had accumulated an aggregation of risks that would have been fatal had, say, terrorists detonated several large-scale nuclear bombs and attacked in the USA. Disaster of that scope was highly improbable, of course, but it's up to insurers to limit their risk in a manner that leaves their financials rock solid if the impossible happens. Indeed, had Genray remained independent of the World Trade Center attack alone, would have threatened the company's existence. When the WTC disaster occurred, it's exposed weakness in Genray's operations that I should have detected earlier, but I was lucky Joe and Ted were on hand, freshly endowed with increased authority, and eager to rapidly correct the errors of the past. They knew what to do, and they did it. It takes time for insurance policies to run off. However, 2002 was well along before we managed to reduce our aggregation to nuclear, chemical, and biological risk, NCB, so it's tolerable level. That problem is now behind us. On another front, Genray's underwriting attitude has been dramatically altered. The entire organization now understands that we wish to write only properly priced business, whatever the effect on volume. Joe and Ted judge themselves only by Genray's underwriting profitability. Size simply doesn't count. Finally, we're making every effort to get our reserving costs. If we feel that we can't know our true costs, and any insurer that has no idea what its costs are is heading for big trouble. At year 2001, General Ray attempted to reserve adequately for all losses that had occurred prior to the date and were not yet paid, but we failed badly. Therefore, the company's 2002 underwriting results were penalized by an additional $1.31 billion that were recorded to correct the estimation mistakes of the earlier years. When our reserving errors that have been recovered, General Ray's line from a country song seemed apt. I wish I did not know what I didn't know then. I can promise you that our top priority going forward is to avoid inadequate reserving, but I can't guarantee success. The natural tendency of most casualty insurance managers to under-reserve, and they must have a particular mindset, which is a surprise you has nothing to do with actuarial expertise. If they are to overcome this devastating bias, additionally, our insurer faces far more difficulties in reserving properly than does a primary insurer. Nevertheless, at Berkshire, we have generally been successful in our reserving. We are determined to be at General Ray as well. In summary, I believe General Ray is now well positioned to deliver huge amounts of no-cost float to Berkshire, and its sink ship catastrophe risk has been eliminated. The company still possesses the important competitive strengths that I've outlined in the past, and it gained another highly significant advantage last year when each of its three largest worldwide competitors previously rated AAA was demoted by at least one rating agency. Among the giants, General Ray, rated AAA across the board, is now in Class B itself in respect to financial strength. No attribute is more important. Recently, in contrast, one of the world's largest insurer, a company regularly recommended to primary insurers by leading brokers, has all but ceased paying claims, including those both valid and due. This company owes many billions of dollars to hundreds of primary insurers who now face massive write-offs. Cheap insurance in full, big bargain when insurance lays out money today in exchange for an insurance promise to pay a decade or two later. It's dangerous and possibly life-threatening for the insurer to deal with but the strongest insurer around. The Berkshire shareholders own Joe and Ty. Huge thank you for their accomplishment in 2002. They worked harder during the year than I would wish for anyone, and it's paying off. At Geico, everything went so well in 2002 that we should pinch ourselves. Growth with substantial profits were outstanding. Policyholders retention was up and sales productivity jumped significantly. These trends continued in early 2003. Thank Tony and Isley for all this. As anyone who knows him will attest, Tony has been in love with Geico for 41 years, ever since he went to work for the company at 18. And just also reflect his passion. He is proud of the money we save policyholders, about $1 billion annually versus what other insurers on average would have charged him. He is proud of the service we provide these policyholders in a key industry survey. Geico was recently ranked up above all major competitors. He's proud of his 19,162 associates who last year were rewarded profit sharing payments equal to 19% of their base salary because of the splendid results they achieved, and he is proud of the growing profits he delivers to Berkshire shareholders. Geico took in $2.9 billion in premiums when Berkshire acquired the full ownership in 1996. Last year's volume was $6.9 billion with plenty of growth to come. Particularly promising, the company's internet operation, whose new business grew by 75%. Last year, check us out at geico.com or call 800-847-7536. In most states, shareholders get a special 8% discount. Here's one footnote to Geico's 2002 earnings that underscores the need for insurers to do business with only stronger future insurers. In 1981 and 1983, the managers running Geico decided to try their hand at writing commercial umbrella and product liability insurance. The risks seemed modest, and the company took in only $3,051,000 from the loss line, used almost all of its $2,979,000 to buy insurance in order to limit its losses. Geico was left with a paltry $72,000 compensation for the minor portion of the risk that it retained. But this small bite of the apple was more than enough to make the experience memorable. Geico's losses from this venture now total a breathtaking $94.1 million, or about 330,000% of the net premium received. Of the total loss and collectible receivables from deadbeat insurers account for no less than $9.3 million, including $19 million charged in 2002. So much for cheaper insurance. Ajit Jain's insurance division was a major reason our float cost us so little last year. If we ever put a photo in Berkshire annual report, it will be of Ajit in color. Ajit's operation has amassed $13.4 billion from a float, more than all but a handful of insurers have ever built up. He accomplished this from a standing start in 1986 and even now has a workforce numbering only 20. And most important, he has produced underwriting profits. His profits are particularly remarkable if you factor in some accounting arcana that I am about to lay on you. So you prefer to eat your spinach or tolerate if the debits and credits aren't your thing? Skip the next two paragraphs. Ajit's 2002 underwriting profits of $534 million came after his operation, recognized a charge of $428 million attributable to retroactive insurance. He has written over the years, in this line of business, we assume from another insurer the obligation to pay up to a specified amount for losses that they have already incurred, often for events that took place decades earlier but that are yet to be paid. For example, because a worker hurt in 1980 will receive monthly payments for life. In these arrangements, an insurer pays us a larger upfront premium, but one that is less than the losses we expect to pay. We willingly accept this differential because our payment are capped, and B, we get used to the money until loss payments are actually made, with these often stretching out over a decade or more. About 80% of the $6.6 billion in asbestos and environmental loss reserves that we carry from capped contracts whose costs consequently can't skyrocket. When we write a retroactive policy, we eventually record both the premium and reserve for the expected loss. The difference between the two is entered as an asset titled deferred charges. Our insurance assume this is no small item. At year-end, for all retroactive policies, it was $3.4 billion. We then amortized this asset downward by charges to income over the expected life of each policy. These charges, $440 million in 2002, including charges to generate, create an underwriting loss, but one that is intentional and desirable. And even after this drag-on report results, achieved a large underwriting gain last year. We want to emphasize, however, that we assume risk in Ajit's operations are huge, far larger than those retained by any other insurer in the world. Therefore, a single event could cause major swing in Ajit's result in any given quarter or year. That bothers us not at all. As long as we are paid appropriately, we love taking on short-term volatility that others wish to shed. At Berkshire, we would rather a lumpy 15% over time than a smooth 12%. If you see Ajit at our annual meeting, bow deeply. Berkshire's smaller insurers had an outstanding year. Their aggregate float grew by 38%, and they realized an underwriting profit of $32 million, or 4.5% of premiums. Collectively, these operations would make one of the finest insurance companies in the country. Including these figures, however, were terrible results in our California workers' compensation operation. We have work to do. There are two surveys severely missed the mark. Until we figure out how to get this business right, we will keep it small. For the fabulous years they had in 2002, we thank Rod Eldridge, John Kaiser, Tom Nernay, Don Tull, and Don Worcester. They add a lot of value to their Berkshire investment. Source of reported earnings. The table that follows shows the main sources of Berkshire's reported earnings. You will notice that purchase of the accounting adjustment dropped sharply in 2002. The reason being the GLP rules changed then, no longer requiring the amortization of goodwill. This change increased our reported earnings, but has had no effect on our economic earnings. Operating earnings: Insurance Group, Underwriting, General Rate, Underwriting, Berkshire Group, Underwriting, Geico, Underwriting Primary and Investment Income, Peril, Building Products, Finance and Financial Products Business, Flight Services, Mid-American Energy, 80% owned, Retail Operations, Scott Fetzer, excluding Finance Operation, Shaw Industries, Other Business, Purchase Accounting Adjustments, Corporate Interest Expense, Shareholders, Designated Contributions, Other Operating earnings, capital gains from investment, total earnings, all entities. Pre-tax earnings: 2002, 1,393, 534, 416, 32, 3,050, 229, 416, 1,016, 225, 613, 166, 129, 424, 256, 119, 86, 17, 19, 6,010, 603, 6,613. $3,671, $647, $221, $30, $2,824, $33, $46, $519, $186, $565, $175, $129, $292, $212, $726, $92, $17, $25. $453, $1,302, $1,773. Berkshire's net earnings after tax and minority interest, 2002, $930, $347, $271, $20, 2096, $156, $313, $659, $133, $359, $97, $83, $258, $160, $65, $55, $11, $12, $3,903, $383, $4,286. $2,391, $433, $144, $18, $1,968, $28, $187, $336, $105, $230, $101, $83, $156, $131, $699, $60, $11, $16, $47, $842, $795. Includes Fruit of the Loom from April 30, 2002, and Grant from September 4, 2002. Includes John Mansell from February 27, 2001, and Tech from July 31, 2001, from data acquisition January 8, 2001. Here's some of the major developments in our non-insurance business. Mid-American Energy earnings grew in 2002 and will likely do so again. Most of the increase above present expected results from the acquisition described earlier. To fund these, Berkshire purchased $1,273 million of Mid-American junior debt, bringing our total holdings of these 11% obligations to $1,728 million. And also invested for $102 million in a common equivalent stock. We now own, on a fully diluted basis, 80.2% of Mid-American's equity. Mid-American's financial statements are presented in detail on page 37. Last year, I told you of the problems at Dexter that led to a huge loss in our shoe business. Thanks to Frank Rooney and Jim Eisler of H.H. Brown, the Dexter operation has been turned around despite the cost of unwinding our problems there. We earned $24 million in shoes last year, and upward swing of $70 million from 2001. Randy Watson and Justin also contributed this improvement, increasing the margin significantly. Well, terrific invested capital. Shoes are a tough business. We have terrific managers and believe that in the future we will earn reasonable returns on capital we employ in this operation. In a so-so year, for home furniture retailers, our operations did well. Among our 8 retailing operations, the best performers of Homemaker and Des Moines. The talented Merchman family achieved outstanding gains in both sales and profits. Nebraska Furniture Mart achieved outstanding gains in both sales and profits. Nebraska Furniture Mart will open a new blockbuster store in Metropolitan Kansas City in August with 450,000 square feet of retail space. It could well produce the second largest volume of operation, being the national champion. I hope your shareholders in the Kansas City area will come out of the opening and keep coming. Our home and construction related business, Acme Brick, Benjamin Moore Paint, John Mansell, Maytech, and Shaw, delivered for $941 million of pre-tax earnings last year from the $292 million in 2001 to $424 million. And Bob Shaw and Julian Saul are terrific operators. Carpet prices increased only 1% last year, but Shaw's productivity gains, excellent expense control deliver significantly improved margins. We chose cost-conscious business at Berkshire. Our model is the window who went to the local newspaper to place an obituary notice. Told there was a 25 cents a word charge. She requested Fred Brown died. She was informed there was a 7-word minimum. Okay, the bereaved woman replied, make it Fred Brown died golf clubs for sale. Earnings from flight service increased last year, but only because we realized a special pre-tax gain of $60 million from the sale of our 50% interest in flight safety being. With this gain, earnings from our training business would have fallen slightly in concert with the slowdown in business aviation activity. Flight safety training continues to be the gold standard for the industry, and we expect the growth in the years to come. At NetJet's refraction ownership operation, we are the runaway leader of the Ford company field. FAA records indicate that our industry share in 2002 was 75%, meaning that the clients purchased or leased planes from us that were valued at triple those recorded by our 3 competitors combined. Last year, our fleet flew $132.7 million nautical miles, taking clients to 130 countries. Our preeminence is directly attributable to Rich Gentili, NetJet CEO. He invented the business in 1986, and ever since he exhibited an unbending devotion to the highest level of service, safety, and security. Rich, Charlie, and I insist on planes and personal worthy of carrying our own families because they regularly do. Though not just revenue to a record in 2002, the company again lost money, a small profit in the U.S. The U.S. more than offset by loss in Europe. Overall, the fractional ownership industry lost significant sums last year, and that is almost certain to be the outcome in 2003 as well. The bulk fact is that airplanes are costly to operate. Over time, this economic reality should work to our advantage, given that for a great many companies, private aircraft are essential business tools, and for the most, these companies not just make compelling sense that either primary supplementary supply of the aircraft they need. Many businesses could save millions of dollars annually by flying with us. Indeed, the yearly savings at some large companies could exceed $10 million. Equally important, these companies would actually increase their operational capabilities by using us. A fractional ownership of single NetJets plane allows the client to have several planes in the air simultaneously. Additionally, through the interchange arrangement we make available, an owner of an interest in one plane You can fly any of the 12 other models using whatever plane makes most sense for a mission. One of my sister owns a fraction of a Falcon 2000, which she uses for trips to Hawaii, but except with the Buffett gene, she interchanges to a more economical Citation XL for short trips in the U.S. The roster of NetJets users confirmed the advantage we offer major businesses. Take General Electric, for example. It has a large fleet of its own, but also has an unsurpassed knowledge of how to utilize aircraft effectively and economically. It is our largest customer. Our finance and financial products line covers a variety of operations, among them certain activities in high-grade fixed income securities that proved highly profitable in 2002. Earnings in this arena will probably continue for a while, but are certain to decrease and perhaps to disappear in time. This category also includes a highly satisfactory but rapidly diminishing income stream from our Berkshire investment in Finova, described in last year's report. Our partner, Lucadia National Corp, has managed this operation with great skill while doing far more than a share of the heavy lifting. I like the division later and hope to join with Lucadia in future transactions. On the minus side, the finance line also includes operations of General Rice Securities, a derivatives and trading business. Its entity lost $173 million pre-tax last year. A result that in part is a belated acknowledgement of faulty, albeit standard, accounting it used in earlier periods. Derivatives, in fact, deserve an extensive look, both in respect to the accounting their users employ and user problems they may pose for both individual companies and economy. Derivatives. Charlie and I are in the mind and how I feel about derivatives and the trading activities that go with them. We've given them time bombs both third parties that deal in them and economic system. Having delivered at the thought, which I'll get back to, let me retreat to explain derivatives, though the explanation is general because the word covers an extraordinarily wide range of financial contracts. Essentially, these instruments call for money to change hands at some future date, with the amount to be determined by one or more reference items such as interest rates, stock prices, or currency values. If, for example, you are either long or short in the S&P 500 futures contract, you are a party to a very simple derivatives transaction with your gain or loss derived from the movements in the index. Derivatives contracts are of varying duration, during sometimes the 20 or more years, and their value is often tied to several variables. Unless derivatives contracts are collateralized or guaranteed, their ultimate value depends on the creditworthiness of the counterparties to them. In the meantime, though, before a contract is settled, the counterparties record profits and losses, often huge in amount, in their current earnings statements without much as a penny changing in hands. The range of derivatives contract is limited only by imagination of mind, or sometimes it seems madmen at Enron. For example, newsprint and broadband derivatives due to be settled many years in the future were put on the books, or say you want to write a contract speculating on the number of twins to be born in Nebraska in 2020. No problem with the price, you will easily find an obliging counterparty. When we purchased Genray, it came with General Ray Securities, a derivatives dealer that Charlie and I didn't want, judging it to be dangerous. We failed in our attempts to sell the operation. However, we are now terminated by closing our derivatives business. Is easier said than done. It will be a great many years before we are totally out of this operation, though we reduce our exposure daily. In fact, the insurance and derivatives business are similar like hell. Both are easy to enter and almost impossible to exit. In either industry, once you write a contract, which may require a large payment decades later, you are usually stuck with it. True, there are methods by which the risk can be laid off with others, but most strategies of that kind leave you with residual liability. Another commonality of insurance and derivatives is both generate reported earnings that are often wildly overstated. That's true because today's earnings are in significant way based on estimates whose accuracy may not be exposed for many years. It will usually be honest, reflecting only the human tendency to take an optimistic view of one's commitments, but the parties' derivatives also have an enormous incentive to cheat and account for them. Those who trade derivatives are usually paid in whole part or earnings calculated by mark-to-market accounting, but often there is no real market. Think about our contract involving twins, and mark-to-model is utilized. This substitution can bring on large-scale mischief. As a general rule, contracts involving multiple reference items and distant settlement dates increase the opportunities for counterparties to use fanciful assumptions. In the twin scenario, for example, the two parties to the contract might well use differing models, allowing both to show substantial profits for many years. In extreme cases, mark-to-model degenerates into what I would call mark-to-myth. Of course, both internal and outside auditors review the numbers, but that's no easy job. For example, General Securities at year-end, after 10 months of winding down its operations, had 14,384 contracts outstanding involving 672 counterparties in the world. Each contract had a plus or minus value derived from one or more reference items. Equals in mind-boggling complexity. Developing a portfolio like that, expert auditors could easily and honestly have widely varying options. The valuation problem is far more academic in recent years. Some huge-scale frauds and near frauds have been facilitated by derivatives trades. Energy and electric utility sectors, for example, companies use derivatives and trading activities to report great earnings until the roof fell, and when they actually try to convert derivatives-related receivables in their balance sheets into cash, mark-to-market then turned out to be truly marked to myth. I can assure you that marking errors in derivatives business have not been symmetrical. Almost invariably have favored either the trader who is eyeing a multi-million-dollar business or the CEO who wants to report impressive earnings, or both. The bonuses were paid and CEO profited from his options. Only much later did shareholders learn that the reported earnings were a sham. Another problem with derivatives is that they can exacerbate trouble that a corporation has run into for completely unrelated reasons. This pile-on effect occurs because many derivative contracts required that a company suffering a credit downgrade immediately supply collateral to counterparties. Imagine that a company is downgraded because of general adversity, that its derivatives instantly kick in, with a requirement imposing an unexpected and enormous demand for cash collateral on the company. The need to meet this demand can then throw the company into a liquidity crisis that may in some cases trigger still more downgrades. It all becomes a spiral that can lead to a corporate meltdown. Derivatives also create a daisy chain risk that is akin to the risk run by insurers or reinsurers that lay off much of their business with others. In both cases, huge receivables from many counterparties tend to build up over time. At General Securities, we still have $6.5 billion of receivables that we've been in liquidation mode for nearly a year. A participant may seem himself so prudent, believing his large credit exposure to be diversified and therefore not dangerous. Under certain circumstances, though, an exogenous event that causes the receivable from company A to go bad will also affect those from company B through Z. History teaches us that crises often cause problems to correlate in a manner undreamed of in more tranquil times. In banking, the recognition of a linkage problem is one of the reasons for the information of the Federal Reserve System. For the Fed was established, the failure of the weak banks would sometimes put sudden and anticipated liquidity demands on previously strong banks, causing them to fail. In turn, the Fed now insulates the strong from the troubles of the weak, but there is no central bank assigned to the job from preventing dominance, toppling, and insurance of derivatives. And these industry firms that are fundamentally solid can become troubled simply because of the travails of other firms further down the chain. When a chain reaction threat exists within any industry, it pays to minimize links on any kind. That's how we conduct our insurance business, and it's one reason we are exiting derivatives. Many people argue that derivatives reduce systemic problems and that participants who can't bear certain risks are unable to transfer them to stronger hands. These people believe that derivatives act to stabilize the economy, facilitate trade, and eliminate bumps for individual participants. And on a micro level, what they say is often true. And Berkshire is sometimes engaged in large-scale derivatives on transactions in order to facilitate certain investment strategies. Charlie and I believe, however, that the macro picture is dangerous and getting more so. Large amount of risk, particularly credit risks, have become concentrated in the hands of relatively few derivative dealers who in addition trade extensively with one or other. The troubles of one could quickly infect others. On top of that, these dealers are owned huge amounts by non-dealer counterparties. Some of these counterparties I've mentioned are linked in ways that could cause them to contemporaneously run into a problem because of a single event, such as the implosion of the telecom industry or the precipitous decline of the value of merchant power projects. Linkage, when it suddenly surfaces, can trigger serious systematic problems. Indeed, in 1998, the leverage and derivatives-heavy activities of a single hedge fund, long-term capital management, caused the Federal Reserve anxiety so severe that it hastily orchestrated a rescue effort. And later, congressional testimony, Fed officials acknowledged that had they not intervened, the outstanding trades of LTCM, a firm unknown to the general public, employing only a few hundred people, could well have posed a serious threat to the stability of American markets. In other words, the Fed acted because its leaders were fearful of what might have happened to other financial institutions had the LTCM domino toppled, and this is a fear that paralyzed many parts of the fixed income market for weeks was far from worst-case scenario. One of the derivatives instruments that LTCM used was a total return swaps contracts that facilitate 100% leverage in various markets, including stocks. For example, Party A to contract, usually a bank puts up all the money for the purchase of a stock, while Party B, without putting up any capital, agrees that a future date will receive any gain or pay any loss that the bank realizes. Total return swaps at this time make a joke of mortgage requirements. Beyond that, other types of derivatives are severely curtailed the ability of regulators to curb leverage and generally get their arms around the risk profiles of banks, insurers, and other financial institutions. Similarly, even experienced investors and analysts encounter major problems analyzing the financial condition of firms that are heavily involved with derivative contracts. When Charlie and I finished reading the long footnotes detailing derivatives activities of major banks, the only thing we is that we don't understand how much risk the institution is running. The derivatives genie is now, well, out of the bottle, and these instruments will almost certainly multiply in variety and number until some event makes their toxicity clear. Knowledge of how dangerous they are has already permeated the electricity and gas business, in which the eruption of major troubles has caused the use of derivatives to diminish dramatically. Elsewhere, however, the derivatives business continues to expand and uncheck. Central banks and governments have so far found no effective way to control or even monitor the risks posed by these contracts. Charlie and I believe Berkshire should be a fortress of financial strength. For the sake of our owners, creditors, policyholders, and employees, we try to be alert to any sort of mega catastrophe risk, and that posture may make us unduly apprehensive about the burgeoning quantities of long-term derivative contracts and a massive amount of uncollateralized receivables that are growing alongside. In our view, however, derivatives are financial weapons of mass destruction, carrying dangers that, while now laden, are potentially lethal. Investment. Below which are common stock investment, those that had market value of more than $500 million at the end of 2002 are itemized. Shares: 151,610,700, 200 million, 9,600 million, 15,999,200, 6,708,760, $24 million, $1,727,765, $53,265,080. Company: the American Express Company, the Coca-Cola Company, Gillette Company, the H&R Block Company, M&T Bank, Moody's Corporation, the Washington Post, Wells Fargo and Company. Others. Total common stocks: 1231.02. Cost: $1,470, $1,299, 600, 255, 103, 499, 11, 306, 4,621, 9,164. Market: $5,359, 8,768, 2,915, 643, 532, 991, 1,275, 2,497, 5,383, 20,363. Waiting to do little in equities, Charlie and I are increasingly comfortable with their holdings in Berkshire major investees because most of them have increased their earnings while their valuations have decreased, but we're not inclined to add to them. Those enterprises have good prospects, we don't yet believe their shares are undervalued. In our view, the same conclusion fits stocks generally. Despite 3 years of falling prices, which has significantly improved the attractiveness of common stock, we still find very few that even mildly interest us. That dismal fact is testimony to the insanity of valuations reached during the Great Bubble. Unfortunately, the hangover may prove to be proportional to the binge. The aversion to equities that Charlie and I exhibit today is far from congenital, and we love our owning common stocks if they can be purchased at attractive prices. In my 61 years of investing, 50 years have offered that kind of opportunity. There will be years like that again. However, we see a very high probability of at least 10% pre-tax return, which translates to 6.5% to 7% after corporate tax. We will sit on sidelines with short-term money. Returning less than 1% after tax, sitting out is no fun, but occasionally successful investing requires inactivity. Last year, we were, however, able to make sensible investment in a few junk bonds and loans. Overall commitments in this sector sextupled, reaching the $8.3 billion by year-end. Investing in junk bonds and investing in stocks are alike certain ways. Both activities require us to make a price-value calculation, always to scan hundreds of securities to find the very few that have attractive reward-risk ratios. But there are important differences between the two disciplines as well. In stocks, we expect every commitment to work out well because we concentrate on conservatively financed business with strong competitive strengths run by able and honest people. If we buy into these companies at sensible prices, losses should be rare. Indeed, during the 38 years we have run the company, affairs gain from the equities we manage at Berkshire, that excluding those managed at General Rate and Geico, have exceeded losses by a ratio of about 100 to 1. Purchasing junk bonds, we are dealing with enterprises that are far more marginal. These businesses are usually overloaded with debt and often operate in industries characterized by low returns on capital. Additionally, the quality of management is sometimes questionable. Management may even have interests that are directly counter to those of debt holders. Therefore, we expect that we will have occasional large losses in junk issues. So far, however, we have done reasonably well in this field. Corporate governance. Both the ability and fidelity of managers have long needed monitoring. Indeed, nearly 2,000 years ago, Jesus Christ addressed this subject, speaking Luke 16:2, approvingly of a certain rich man who told his manager, "Give an account of my stewardship, thou mayest no longer be steward." Accountability and stewardship, whether in the last decade becoming qualities deemed of little importance by those caught up in the Great Bible, stock prices went up, but the behavioral norms of managers went down. By the late 90s, as a result, CEOs who traveled the high road did not encounter heavy traffic. Most CEOs, it should be noted, are men and women you would be happy to have as trustees for your children's assets or next door neighbors. To many of these people, however, have in recent years behaved badly at the office, fudging numbers and drawing obscene pay for mediocre business achievement. These otherwise decent people simply followed the career path of Mae West. I was snow at it, but I drifted. In theory, corporate boards should have prevented this deterioration of conduct. I last wrote about the responsibilities of directors in the 1993 annual report. We'll send you a copy of the discussion and request, or you may read it on the internet in the corporate governance section of the 1993 letter. I said the director should behave as if there is a single absentee owner whose long-term interest. Why should they try for it in proper ways? This means that directors must get rid of a manager who is mediocre or worse. No matter how likable he may be, director must react as he did the chorus girl bride of an 85-year-old multimillionaire when he asked whether she would love him if he lost his money. Of course, the young beauty replied, "I would miss you, but I would still love you." In the 1993 annual report, I also said directors had another job. If able but greedy managers overreach and drive too deeply into shareholders' pockets, directors must slap their hands. Since I wrote that, overreaching has become common, but a few hands have been slapped. Why have intelligent and decent directors failed so miserably? The answer lies not in inadequate laws. It's always been clear that directors are obligated to present the interest of shareholders, but rather in what I'd call boardroom atmosphere. It's almost impossible, for example, in a boardroom populated by well-mannered people, to raise the question of whether the CEO should be replaced. It's equally awkward to question proposed acquisition that has been endorsed by CEO, particularly when his inside staff and outside advisors present and unanimously support his decision. They wouldn't be in the room if they didn't. Finally, when the Compensation Committee, armed as always with support from a high-paid consultant, reports on a mega grant of options to CEO, it will be like belching at the dinner table for directors to suggest that the company could reconsider. These social difficulties argue for outside directors regularly meeting without CEO or reform that is being instituted that I enthusiastically endorse. I doubt, however, that most of the other new government rules and recommendations will provide benefits commensurate with the monetary and other costs they impose. The currency cry for independent directors, it is certainly true that it is desirable to have directors who think and speak independently, but they must also be business-savvy, interested, and shareholder-oriented. In my 1993 commentary, those are the three qualities I describe as essential. Over the span of 40 years, I have been on 19 public company boards, excluding Berkshire, and have interacted with perhaps 250 directors. Most of them are independents defined by today's rules, but the great majority of these directors lacked at least one of three qualities I value as a result of their contribution to shareholder well-being was minimal, at best and too often negative. These people, decent and intelligent though, they were simply did not know enough about business nor care enough about shareholders to question foolish acquisition or egregious compensation. My own behavior, I must ruefully add, frequently fell short as well. Too often I was silent when management made proposals that I judged to be counter to the interest of shareholders. In those cases, collegiately trumped independence. So that we may further see the failings of independence, let's look at a 62-year case study covering thousands of companies. Since 1940, federal law has mandated the large proportion of directors of investment companies, most of these mutual funds, be independent. The requirement was originally 40%, and now it is 50%. In any case, a typical fund has long operated with a majority of directors who qualify as independent. These directors and the entire board have many perfunctory duties, but in actuality have only two important responsibilities: obtaining the best possible investment manager and negotiating with that manager for the lowest possible fee. When you are seeking investment help yourself, those two goals are the only ones that count, and directors acting for other investors should have exactly the same priorities. Yet, when it comes to independent directors pursuing either goal, the record has been absolutely pathetic. Many thousand investment company boards meet annually to carry out the vital job of selecting who will manage the savings of the millions of owners they represent. Year after year, director of fund A select manager A fund B, director select manager B, etc. in zombie-like process that makes a mockery of stewardship. Very occasionally, a board will revolt, but for the most part, a monkey will type out Shakespeare play before an independent mutual fund director will suggest that his fund look at other managers, even if the incumbent managers persistently deliver substandard performance when they are handling their own money. Of course, directors will look to alternative advisor, but never enters their minds to do so when they are acting as fiduciaries for others. The hypocrisy permeating the system is vividly exposed when a fund management company, call it A, is sold for a huge sum to manager B. Now the independent directors experience a counter-revelation, decide that manager B is the best that can be found, even though B was available. Ignoring previous years, not so intentionally, B also could formerly have been hired at a far lower rate than is possible now that has bought manager A. That's because B has laid out a fortune to acquire A, and B must now recoup that cost through fees paid by the A shareholders who were delivered as part of the deal. For a terrific discussion of the mutual fund business, read John Bogle's Common Sense on Mutual Funds. A few years ago, my daughter was asked to become director of a family fund managed by a major institution. The fees she would have received as a director were very substantial, enough to have increased her annual income by about 50%. Abushi will tell you that she could use. Legally, she would have been an independent director, but did the fund manager who approached her think that there was a chance that she would think independently as to what advisor the fund should employ? Of course not. I am proud to say that she showed real independence by turning down the offer. The fund, however, had no trouble filling the slot. Surprise, the fund has not changed managers. Investment company directors have failed as well in negotiating management fees, just as compensation committee of management companies have failed to hold the compensation of their CEOs to sensible levels. If you or I were empowered, I can assure you that we could easily negotiate materially lower management fees with the incumbent managers of most mutual funds, and believe me, if directors were promised a portion of any fee savings to realize, the skies would be filled with falling fees. Under the current system, though, directors will meaning everything to managers, so guess who wins? Having the right money manager, of course, is far more important to fund than reducing the manager's fee. Both tasks are nonetheless the job of directors, in stepping up to these all-important responsibilities. Tens of thousands of independent directors over more than 6 decades have failed miserably. They succeeded, however, in taking care of themselves for their fees, from serving on multiple boards of a single family of funds, often well into 6 figures. When the managers cares deeply and the directors don't, what's needed is a powerful countervailing force, and that's the missing element in today's corporate governance. Getting rid of mediocre CEOs and eliminating overreaching by the able ones requires action by owners, big owners. The logistics aren't that tough. The ownership of stock has grown increasingly concentrated in recent decades, and today it would be easy for institutional managers to exert their will on problem situations. 20 or even fewer of the largest institutions acting together could effectively reform corporate governance at a given company simply by withholding their votes for directors who are tolerating odious behavior. And my view, this kind of concentrated action is the only way that corporate stewardship can be meaningfully improved. Unfortunately, certain major investing institutions have glasshouse problems and arguing for better governance. Elsewhere, they would shudder, for example, at the thought of their own performance and fees being closely inspected from fame by their own boards, but Jack Bogle of Vanguard fame, Chris Davis of Davis Advisors, and Bill Miller of Legamason are now offering leadership and getting CEOs to treat their owners properly. Pension funds as well as other fiduciaries will reap better investment returns in the future if they support these men. The acid test for reform will be CEO compensation. Managers will cheerfully agree to the board diversity, attest to SEC filings, and adopt meaningless proposals relating to the process. What many will fight, however, is hard to look at their own pay and perks. In recent years, compensation committees, too, often have been tail-wagging puppy dogs meekly following recommendations by consultants, a breed not known for allegiance to the faceless. Shareholders who pay their fees, if you can't tell whose side someone is on, they are not on yours. True, each committee is required by the SEC to say its reasoning about to pay in the proxy, but the words are usually boilerplate, written by company lawyers or its human relations department. This costly charade should cease. Directors should not serve on the compensation committees unless they are themselves capable of negotiating on behalf of owners. They should explain both how they think about pay and how they measure performance dealing with shareholders' money. Moreover, they should behave as they would their own. In the 1890s, Samuel Gompers described the goal of organized labor as more. In the 1990s, America's CEO adopted this battle cry. The upshot is that CEOs have often amassed riches while their shareholders have experienced financial disasters. Directors should stop such piracy. There's nothing wrong with paying well for truly exceptional business performance, but for anything short of that, it's time for directors to shout less. It would be travesty if the bloated pay of recent years became a baseline for future compensation. Compensation committees should go back to the drawing boards. Rules that have been proposed and that are almost certain to go into effect will require changes in Berkshire boards obliging us to add directors who meet the codified requirements for independence. Doing so, we will add a test that we believe important but far more determinative in fostering independence. We will select directors who have huge and true ownership interests, that is stock, that they or their family have purchased, not been given by Berkshire or received via options. Expecting those interests to influence their actions to a degree that dwarfs other considerations such as prestige and board fees, that gets to an often overlooked point about directors' compensation, which at public companies averages perhaps $50,000 annually. It baffles me how the many directors who look to these dollars perhaps 20% or more of their annual income can be considered independent, when Ron Olson, for example, who is on our board, may be deemed not independent because he receives a tiny percentage of his very large income from Berkshire legal fees. As the investment company Sega suggests, a director whose moderate income is heavily independent director's fees and who hopes mightily to be invested to join other boards in order to earn more fees is highly unlikely to offend the CEO or fellow directors who in a major way will determine his reputation in corporate circles. If regulators believe that significant money taints independence, and it certainly can, they have overlooked a massive class of possible offenders. At Berkshire, wanting our fees to be meaningless to our directors, we pay them only a pittance. Additionally, not wanting to insulate our directors from any corporate disaster we might have, we don't provide them with the officers and directors liability insurance, unorthodox that, not so incidentally, has saved our shareholders many millions of dollars over the years. Basically, we want the behavior of our directors to be driven by the effect of the decision we'll have on their families' net worth, not by their compensation. That's the equation for Charlie and me as managers, and we think it's the right one for Berkshire director as well. To find new directors, we will look through our shareholders list for people who directly own and their family have had large Berkshire holdings in the millions of dollars. For a long time, individuals making that cut should automatically meet two of our tests, namely that they be interested in Berkshire and shareholders oriented. In our third test, we will look for business savvy, a competence that is far from commonplace. Finally, we'll continue to have members of the Buffett family on the board. They are not there to run the business after I die, nor will they they then receive compensation for any kind. Their purpose is to ensure for both our shareholders and managers that Berkshire's special culture will be nurtured when I'm succeeded by other CEOs. Any change we make in the compensation for our board will not alter the way in Charlie I run Berkshire. We'll continue to emphasize substance over form in our work and waste as little time as possible during board meetings and show and tell. The functional activities, the most important job of our board is likely to be the selection of successors to Charlie and me. That is the matter upon which we'll focus. The board we have up to now had to oversee a shareholder and the business consistently run in accord with the economic principles set forth on pages 68 to 74, which are all new shareholders to read. Our goal is to obtain new directors who are equally devoted to those principles. The audit committee. The audit committees can't audit. Only a company outside the direct auditor can determine whether the earnings that a management purports to have made or suspect Reforms that ignore this reality that instead focus on the structure and charter of the audit committee will accomplish a little. As we've discussed for too many managers have fudged their companies in numbers in recent years, using both accounting and operational techniques that are typically legal but that nevertheless materially misled investors. Frequently, auditors knew about these deceptions too often. However, they remain silent. The key job of the audit committee is simply to get the auditors to divulge what they know. To do this job, the committee must make sure that the auditors worry about misleading its members and about offending management. In recent years, auditors have not felt that way. They have instead generally viewed the CEO rather than the shareholders or directors as their client. That has been a natural result of day-to-day working relationship and also of the auditors understanding that no matter what the book says, CEO and CFO pay their fees and determine whether they return for both auditing and other work. The rules that have been recently instituted won't necessarily change this reality, but will break this close relationship as audit committees unequivocally putting auditors on the spot, making them understand they will become liable for major monetary penalties if they don't come forth with what they know or suspect. In my opinion, audit committees can accomplish this goal by asking 4 questions of auditors, the answer to which should be recorded and reported to shareholders. These questions are: 1. If the auditor was solely responsible for preparation of the company's financial statements, would they have in any way been prepared differently from the manner selected by management? This question should cover both material and non-material differences. If the auditor would have done something differently, both management argument and the auditor's response should be disclosed. The audit committee should then evaluate the facts. If the auditor were an investor, would he have received the plain English information essential to his understanding the company's financial performance during the reporting period? Is the company following the same internal audit procedure that would be followed if the auditor himself were CEO? If not, what are the differences and why? 4. Is the auditor aware of any actions, either accounting or operational, that have had the purpose and effect of moving revenues or expenses from one reporting period to another? If the audit committee asks these questions, its composition is the focus of most reform is of the minor importance. In addition, the procedure will save time and expense when auditors are put on the spot. They will do their duty if they are not put on the spot. Well, we have seen the results of that. The questions we have enumerated should be asked at least a week before an earnings report is released to the public. That timing will allow differences between the auditors and management to be aired with the committee and resolved if the timing is tighter. If an earnings release is imminent when the auditors committee interact, the committee will feel pressure to rubber stamp reported figures. Here's the enemy of accuracy. My thinking, in fact, is that the SEC's recent shortening of the reporting deadlines will hurt the quality of information the shareholders receive. Charlie and I believe the rules is mistaken and should be rescinded. The primary advantage of our 4 questions is that they will act as a prophylactic. Once auditors know that the audit committee will require them to affirmatively endorse rather than merely acquiesce to management's actions, they will resist misdoings early in the process, well before spacious figures become embedded in the company's books. Fear of the plaintiff's bar will see to that. The Chicago Tribune ran a 4-part series on Arthur Andersen last September that did a great job of eliminating how accounting standards and audit quality have eroded in recent years. A few decades ago, an Arthur Andersen audit opinion was the gold standard of profession within the former elite professional standards group. PSG insisted on honest reporting no matter what pressures were applied by the clients. Sticking to these principles, the PSG took a stand in 1992. The cost of stock options should be recorded as an expense. It clearly was. PSG's position was reversed, however, by the rainmaking partners of Andersen, who knew that their clients wanted high reported earnings no matter what the reality. Many CEOs have fought expensing because they knew the obscene megagrams of options they craved would be slashed if the true cost of these had to be recorded. Soon after the Andersen reversal, the Independent Accounting Standards Board (FASB) voted 7-0 for expensing options. Predictably, the major auditing firms and an army of CEOs stormed Washington to pressure the Senate with better institutions to decide accounting questions. Into castrating the FASB, the voices of protesters were amplified by the large political contributions usually made with corporate money belonging to the very owners about to be bamboozled. It was not a sight for a civics class. To which shame, the Senate voted 88-9 against expensing. Several prominent senators even called for the demise of the FASB if it didn't abandon its position. So much for independence. Arthur Levitt Jr., then chairman of the SAC and generally a vigilant champion of the shareholders, has since described his reluctant bowing to congressional and corporate pressure as the act of his chairmanship that he most regrets. The heels of this sordid affair are related in Levitt's excellent book, Take on the Street. With Senate in his pocket and SEC outgunned corporate America knew that it was now boss when it came to accounting. With that, a new era of anything goes earnings reported blessed and in some cases encouraged by big-name auditors was launched. The licentious behavior that followed quickly became an example for the Great Bubble. After being threatened by the Senate, FASB backed off its original position and adopted an honor system approach, declaring expensing to be preferable, but also allowing companies to ignore the cost if they wished. This heartening result of the 500 companies in the S&P 498 adopted the method deemed less desirable, which of course let them report higher earnings. Compensation-hungry CEOs loved this outcome. Let the FASB have the honor, they had the system. In our 1992 annual report discussing the unseemly and self-serving behavior of so many CEOs, I said the business elite risked losing its credibility in issues of civilian society, about which it may have much value to say when it advocates the incredible and issues of significance to itself. That loss of credibility has occurred. The job of CEOs now to regain America's trust, and for the country's sake, it's important that they do so. They will not succeed in this endeavor, however, by the way of fatuous ads, meaningless policy statements, or structural changes of boards and committees. Instead, CEOs must embrace stewardship as a way of life and treat their own owners as a partner, not pasties. It's time for CEOs to walk the walk. 3 suggestions for investors. First, beware of companies displaying a weak accounting. If a company still does not expense options, or if its pension assumptions are fanciful, watch out when management take the low road in aspects that are visible, and it is likely they are following a similar path behind the scenes. There's just one cockroach in the kitchen. Trumpeting EBITDA. Earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization is a particularly pernicious practice. Doing so implies that depreciation is not truly an expense, given that it is a non-cash charge. That's nonsense. It's truth. Depreciation is a particular and attractive expense because the cash outlay it represents paid up front before the asset acquired has delivered any benefits to business. Imagine if you will that at the beginning of this year a company paid all of its employees for the next 10 years of their service. In a way, they will lay out cash for a fixed asset to be useful for 10 years. In the following 9 years, compensation would be a non-cash expense or reduction of prepaid compensation asset established this year. Would anyone care to argue that the recording of the expense in years 2 through 10 would be simply a bookkeeping formality? Second, intelligible footnotes usually indicate untrustworthy management. If you can't understand a footnote or other managerial explanation, it's usually because the CEO doesn't want you to. Enron's description of certain transactions still baffle me. Finally, be suspicious of companies that trumpet earnings projections and growth expectations. Business seldom operate in a tranquil, no surprise environment, and earnings simply don't advance smoothly, except, of course, if the offering books of investment bankers. Charlie and I not only don't know today what our business will earn next year, we don't even know what they will next quarter. We are suspicious of those CEOs who regularly claim they do know the future, and we become downright incredulous that they consistently reach their declared targets. Managers have always promised to make the numbers. Will at some point be tempted to make the numbers. Shareholder designated contributions. About 97.3% of all eligible shares participating in Berkshire 2002 shareholders designated contributions program contributions totaling $16.5 million. Cumulatively, over 22 years of program, Berkshire has made contributions of $197 million pursuant to the instructions of our shareholders. The rest of Berkshire giving is done by our subsidiaries, which take the philanthropic patterns that prevailed before they were required, except that their former owners themselves take on responsibility for their personal charities. In aggregate, our subsidiary made contributions of $24 million in 2002, including in-kind donations of $4 million. To participate in future programs, you must own Class A shares that are registered in the name of the actual owner, not the nominee name of the broker, bank, or depository. Shares not so registered on August 31, 2003 will be ineligible for the 2003 program. When you get a contribution form from us, return it promptly so that it does not get put aside or forgotten. The signatures received after the due date will not be honored. The annual meeting. This year's annual meeting will be held on Saturday, May 3, and once again, we will be at the Civic Auditorium. The doors will all be open at 7 a.m. The movie will begin at 8:30, and the meeting itself will commence at 9:30. There will be a short break at noon for food. Sandwiches will be available at the Civic's concession stands. And at an interlude aside, Charlie and I will answer questions until 3:30. Give us your best shot. An attachment to the proxy material that is enclosed with this report explains how you can obtain credentials you will need for an admission to the meeting. And in advances for plane, hotel, and car reservations, we have again signed up American Express 800-799-6634 to give you special help. They do a terrific job for us each year, and I thank them for it. In our usual fashion, we will run vans toward the larger hotels at the meeting. Afterwards, the vans will make trips back to the hotels in the Nebraska Furniture Mart, Borsams, and the airport. Even so, you're likely to find a car useful. Our exhibit area for Berkshire goods and services will be bigger and better than ever this year, so be prepared to spend. I think you will particularly enjoy visiting the Pampered Chef display, where you may run into Doris and Sheila. Geico will have booths staffed by a number of its top counselors from around the country, all of them ready to supply you with auto insurance quotes. In most cases, Geico will be able to give you a special shareholder discount, usually 8%. The special offers permitted by 41 of the 49 jurisdictions in which we operate. Bring the details of your existing insurance and check out whether we can save you money. On Saturday at the Omaha Airport, we will have the usual array of aircraft from the NetJets available for your inspection. Just ask a representative of the Civic about viewing any of these planes. If you buy what we consider an appropriate number of items during the weekend, you will well need your own plane to take them home. Furthermore, if you buy a fraction of a plane, I'll personally see that you get a 3-pack of briefs from Fruit of the Loom. At Nebraska Furniture Mart, located on 77-acre site on 72nd Street between Dodge and Pacific, we'll again be having Berkshire weekend pricing, which means we will be offering our shareholders a discount that is customarily given only to employees. We initiated the special pricing at FM 6 years ago, and sales during weekend grew from $5.3 million in 1997 to $14.2 million in 2002. To get the discount, you must make your purchase during the Thursday, May 1 through Monday, May 5 period, and also represent your media and credential. The period special pricing will even apply to the products of several prestigious manufacturers that normally have ironclad rules against discounting, but that in the spirit of our shareholder weekend, we have made an exception for you. We appreciate your cooperation. MFM is open from 10 a.m. to 9 p.m. on weekdays and 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. on Sundays. On Saturdays this year from 6 p.m. to 10 p.m., we're having a special affair for shareholders only. I'll be there eating hot dogs and drinking Coke. Borsam's largest jewelry store in the country, except for Tiffany's Manhattan store, will have 2 shareholders-only events. The first will be cocktail reception from 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. on Friday, May 22nd. Main gala will be from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. on Sunday, May 4. Ask Charlie to autograph your sales tickets. Shareholder price will be available Thursday through Monday, so if you wish to avoid the large crowds at Walsam on Friday evening and Sunday, come at other times and identify yourself as a shareholder. On Saturday, will be open until 6 p.m. Borsam's operates on a gross margin that is fully 20 percentage points below that of a major rival, so the more you buy, the more you save, or at least that's what my wife and daughter tell me. In the mall outside of Borsam's, we will have some of the world's top bridge experts available to play with our shareholders on Sunday afternoon. We expect Bob Hamill, Sharon Osberg, Fred Gilman, and Sherry Weinstock to host tables. Patrick Wolf, twice U.S. champion, will also be in the mall taking all comers blindfolded. Last year, Patrick played 6 games simultaneously with his blindfolded securely in place, and for the first time suffered a loss. He won other 5 games, however. He's been training overtime ever since and is planning to start a new streak this year. Additionally, Will Roberti, only one of 2 players who have twice won a Bagman World Champion, will be in hand to test your skill at the game. Finally, we'll have a newcomer, Peter Morris, the winner of the World Scrabble Championship in 1991. Peter will play on 5 boards simultaneously. No blindfold for him, however. It also allows challengers to consult the Scrabble dictionary. We're also going to test your vocal cords at the mall. My friend all over Philadelphia will be the piano playing any song in any key. Susie and I will lead the singing. She is good. Goritz, my favorite steakhouse, will be open for Berkshire shareholders on Sunday, May 4, and will be serving from 4 p.m. until 10 p.m. Please remember that to come to Goritz on Sunday, you must have a reservation to make one call for 0255-13733 on April 1, but not before. If Sunday is sold out, try Goritz on one of our later evenings. We'll be in town. Show our sophistication by ordering a T-bone with a double order of hash browns. There won't be a ball game this year after my fastball was clocked 5 mph last year. I decided to hang up my spikes, so I'll see you on Saturday at night at NFM instead. Next year, our meeting will be held at Omaha's new convention center. The switch in location will allow us to hold the event on either Saturday or Monday, whichever is major you prefer. Using an enclosed special ballot, please vote for your preference, but only if you're unlikely to attend in the future. We will make a Saturday Monday decisions based upon a count of shareholders, not shares. That's Class B shareholder owning 1 share will have a vote equal to that of Class A shareholder owning many shares. If the vote is closed, we will go to the preference of out-of-towners. Again, please vote only if there is a reasonable chance that you will be attending some meetings in the future. February 21, 2003, Warren E. Buffett, Chairman of the Board.